everyone, welcome to Life, Loss and Hope. My name is Sarah Bell. Please continue to like, to subscribe and to share these videos as we are passionate about grief, education and supporting those who are bereaved. So today I'm going to be talking about a kind of tricky subject, a difficult one. The thought is the question that people often ask me. Why do I think that my loved one will come back? So today let's look at what happens in your brain when you lose someone and why we often keep expecting them to come back even though we know they're gone. In early grief, it is really common to think this, that they may come back, and this thought has been echoed by countless grieving people that I have supported. And for me personally too, there's been many times even over the years that I've been suddenly hit with thoughts like, I can't believe they're gone. Maybe I'll see them again. I can't believe that I won't ever see them again. In early grief, I just couldn't believe it. It did really feel like a nightmare that I'd wake up from, or a horrible, cruel trick, or simply not even true. And although reluctantly people tell me about these things, they often share things like they say, "Darling, I'm home," when they come in from work, or that they say good morning or good night to their loved one, or that perhaps they open the front door at night before they lock it and say, "Please come home soon," or perhaps they talk to photos, so on and so forth. I reassure people that it's not something to feel embarrassment or shame about, and neither does it mean that you are in denial or going crazy. It can be quite normal in grief to behave like this. After all, waiting for someone to get home, talking to our loved ones, or longing to see them is such an embedded part of our daily life, formed over years or even decades. To understand what's going on, let's explore some of the complex changes in the grieving brain, how it functions and adapts to loss. Grieving does cause many changes in the way our brains work, resulting in different types of thinking that may feel uncontrollable, uncomfortable, confusing even, and unhealthy. So today we're going to look at 4 main areas of the grieving brain and how our thinking is affected. Most of these are actually natural parts of our brain function, but it's good to understand why these thoughts happen, and it can equip us to be less controlled by them and cope better in grief. So going back to the question, why do I still think they're coming back? Firstly, we can think this because as we grieve, we often maintain 2 contradictory beliefs that are held simultaneously. So there's the knowledge that the loved one is dead, alongside a persistent feeling that our loved one will return. And this clash of thoughts can make it difficult for us in grief to adjust to life without them. After a death, it is common for many people to keep every one of the possessions, the house unchanged, which can be a way of continuing the bond with them, maintaining a sense of their presence, creating security and safety around us, fostering a deep sense of life as it was with our loved one. Whilst for other people, there's a need to give away or remove their personal belongings quickly. We all cope in our own way. There's no wrong or right way to manage our loved one's possessions, just your way. Some people struggle to part with anything that their loved one had, believing on some level that they may return and need those belongings again. It's interesting, from an evolutionary standpoint, the belief that loved ones will return served as an important survival function. Those who maintained this belief would be more likely to stay with and protect their young while they were waiting for their partner to return with food, which made their offspring more likely to survive evolving generations. The neurological basis for these contradictory beliefs lies in different types of memory and knowledge systems in the brain. So we have something called episodic memory, such as the specific moment of learning or witnessing about a death, existing alongside implicit knowledge, which is knowledge gained over a long period of time, which guides our thoughts and behaviours without our awareness. In grief, there can be a conflict between the explicit episodic memories, that is knowing that your loved one has died, and the implicit knowledge based on predictions from our brain's attachment maps, that is believing your loved one will return because they always have done previously. And that can create an internal contradiction that really takes the brain time to resolve. For me, this understanding has massively helped my work in supporting others in early grief who are brave enough to admit that they are holding these kind of contradictory beliefs. And it's reassuring to learn what is happening is a process of our brains rewiring and processing, that we're not in denial or going mad. From a psychological standpoint, our beliefs serve as mental grids or shortcuts that help us make sense of and navigate the world more efficiently. And all of those are based on our experiences, our perceptions and interpretations. They can be changed by new information, but experts explain that our nervous system is evolved to maintain a state of equilibrium, which includes maintaining consistency and our existing beliefs. Therefore, changing our beliefs to match the new information is very energy consuming and difficult because our brains often reject that new information. It's often quoted, isn't it, that it takes 40 days to make or break or create a new behaviour or a belief. But in grief, it is much harder to take in new information because we are so exhausted, emotionally depleted by lack of sleep, pain in our bodies, and we're operating on a very low battery status. So in the case of losing a loved one, the evidence that they're gone is undeniable, but the contradiction may not go away until much later, when the forever aspect of the loss in this earthly realm has been realised. For many people, including myself as a Christian, we can hold on to the belief that our loved one is not really truly forever gone and that we will be reunited with them in heaven. Faith can bring great hope and comfort, and research does bear out that such beliefs can improve people's ability to cope with loss and trauma. The theory of continuing bonds also suggests that total detachment from a loved one isn't really necessary for healthy grieving. Experts suggest that maintaining relationship, albeit a different one, a changed one, with our deceased is good for us by cherishing their belongings, continuing to hold a place for them in our life, or even believing in spiritual experiences that signal their presence. It may make it easier to cope and reduce the pain of loss. The second reason we can still think our loved one is coming back is that in a grieving brain, there's a function called intrusive thoughts, and these can create havoc. These are simply thoughts about our loved ones that pop up unexpectedly during everyday activities. They can be triggered by smells, music, or situations that provoke involuntary thoughts that catch us off guard emotionally, causing upset because they remind us of our loss. For example, you might be cooking the dinner when you smell a smell or you see something and a sudden memory of your lost spouse forces its way into your awareness, bringing a tidal wave of grief, perhaps tears, anger, intense pain and longing and loneliness. Experiencing grief-related intrusive thoughts is not in your control, and it's quite normal. So let them in, let out the emotions, and let them recede. They're unavoidable. In contrast, when we voluntarily remember a loved one, it can be comforting and soothing. For example, you may deliberately reflect on a holiday, a fond memory, or something funny your spouse once said, or remember a special occasion. Voluntary thoughts about your loved one may not be limited to memories. You may find it soothing to even fantasize about them, imagining what they would be doing if they were still alive or what they would be thinking. Doing so in moderation and in a way that provides comfort is called adaptive daydreaming. But doing so excessively and in a way that interferes with your life is called maladaptive daydreaming and is considered an unhealthy coping mechanism and will make it difficult for you to function. So if you're doing that, you may consider to seek counselling. Intrusive thoughts are a part of normal brain function, similar to how we naturally think about people throughout the day. They pop into our mind, but the brain continues this pattern of regularly reminding us also about our deceased loved one, which can be painful because these thoughts now conflict with reality. So understanding intrusive thoughts from this perspective can normalise these experiences as part of the brain's learning process rather than viewing them as signs of poor coping or being abnormal. Another way the brain provides reminders about our loved one is through dreams. Research shows that it's common for people to dream about their loved ones after death, and more than about 80% who lose their spouse will dream about them at some point in the following year. And people say about 90% of those dreams they find comfortingly positive. But also remember that there's nothing wrong with you if you do not dream about them. It's not a reflection on your relationship or your love. Thirdly, a grieving brain experiences what we call counterfactual thinking. That is thinking that imagines alternative scenarios that could have prevented the death. The endless thinking and questioning that we go through, the what-ifs, the if-onlys that flood our minds in early grief can bring guilt and blame. Thoughts such as, if I'd done something different, my loved one would still be alive. Perhaps if I'd had a second opinion. What if I'd noticed something sooner? I should have seen they were ill. The list can be endless and can feel like a torment to the mind, and it can almost be obsessive and compelling. It's recognised that people do engage in counterfactual thinking because believing that we had control over a situation feels better than accepting that things happen for no reason. Our human brains are wired to have reasons and manage life, and they find it difficult to adapt to random, uncontrollable circumstances. It seems strange to think we would often rather feel guilt and blame at some level than feel helpless and out of control. So usually there's 4 types of this counterfactual thinking. Thinking towards yourself, wishing you'd done something differently, towards others, wishing they had done something differently, wishing the situation was different, and also thinking of how the situation could have been worse. Counterfactual thinking can be helpful initially in the brain as it searches for reasons and data to process what has happened, because we try to make sense of what can never fully make sense. Although it can be a part of the normal grief journey, if self-blaming persists, it can really worsen a depressive state and it can complicate grief recovery. And again, if this is the case, you may consider counselling. Lastly, the 4th type of brain function experienced when grieving is called rumination. This involves spending time thinking over and over and over again memories, events and feelings. And this also can be helpful or harmful depending on the type of rumination. Generally, there's 2 types, reflection and brooding. So reflection involves purposely analysing your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, trying to solve problems, which can be beneficial and does lead to less depression over time. On the other hand, brooding takes the form of a passive, more negative thinking that you can't easily stop and can drag you into depression. So what you ruminate on can also affect the grieving process in a positive or a negative way. If you ruminate on how you feel about the loss, your emotions and your reactions, this can help lessen your grief over time. Grief groups can be great places where you can talk honestly about how you're feeling, and this can provide emotional support from others. Journaling can also be therapeutic. However, ruminating on how other people have reacted to your grief, such as the inappropriate things that they've said to you, or how unfair or unjust the death was, can have a long-term negative effect. Remember, it is okay to feel the injustice and hurt from others, but excessive rumination on these can lead you to be stuck in grief. The feeling of disbelief that follows the death of a loved one is an adaptive and temporary response, one that protects us from the full force of the heartbreaking pain all at once, a natural kind of anaesthetic that wears off gradually to the gravity and the pain of the loss. Embracing the painful reality does not happen quickly or easily, and it can be exhausting. And when the loss finally sinks in, it can be surrounded by profound sadness, doubts, and wondering if you'll ever feel okay as you imagine life without them. It takes time, and even years later, I still sometimes catch myself saying those things. How did this happen? I can't really believe it. Or then I imagine seeing them in a crowd. I know the reality of the situation, but it is okay to have occasional thoughts like this. And when I do look forward, I think about that precious reunion in heaven. Thank you for listening.